Hey, how's it going, guys? So today we're back with more epic history. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We're not going to be checking out one video. We're actually going to be checking out two videos. So it is about the HMS Victory, and it is basically the HMS Victory total guide, which is split into two parts. I was originally thinking about doing it as two separate videos, but I was like, hey, you know what the hell? Let's just watch both of them today. Now, for the HMS Victory, when you guys recommended this to me, I got like 5 recommendations for this video. I kept on going, it sounds familiar. The ship's name sounds familiar, but I just couldn't pinpoint where. And then I looked in the description and it answered my question. It's the flagship of Vice Admiral Nelson. And I was going, oh, I know who that is. So first, we're going to be checking out the very first video, and then we're going to jump into the second part, and then let's take a look into the HMS Victory.
1805. Britain is at war with France.
Dude, that's a man of war.
The French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte will soon dominate mainland Europe. But at sea, Britain's Royal Navy reigns supreme. That year, Napoleon wins one of his greatest victories against the Russians and Austrians at Austerlitz. But 6 weeks earlier, off the coast of Spain, the British win a battle of much more lasting strategic significance. Off Cape Trafalgar, the Royal Navy inflicts a crushing defeat on the combined fleet of France and Spain. Enemy losses are devastating.
I never heard of this battle,
British naval superiority will not be seriously challenged again for the rest of the war. Britain goes.
So basically their enemies was like, damn dude, that was bad, we got cooked. All right, you know what, we're not doing that again.
Goes on to play a leading role in Napoleon's eventual defeat. Its greatest contribution, its wooden walls. The Royal Navy. Britain is the world's largest naval power, with 136 ships of the line and 110,000 men at sea. The Navy protects the homeland from invasion. It allows Britain to project force into Europe with raids and expeditionary forces. It cuts off enemy trade while protecting Britain's own. It isolates and seizes overseas colonies, including the vastly profitable sugar islands of the West Indies.
Yeah, that would explain Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Black Flag. But also on top of that, I did save a video where it shows basically like just like an inside look of the ship of the line of a ship during this time. So I had that video saved. But also on top of that, I just wanted to basically take a look at the Guadalupe, captured from the French. Martinique, I remember that from Black Flag. Trinidad, I remember that from Black Flag. And that's where Adewale was born. Cape Colony at the bottom, yep. And Mauritius? Hope I said that correctly.
It undermines enemy economies, while allowing Britain to use its own financial strength to sustain its allies. In 2 decades of war with France, Britain wins a series of naval battles
the Nile,
that ensure it can carry out these war-winning strategies effectively. Among the Royal Navy's most formidable warships, HMS Victory.
Man, look at the amount of sails it has.
A first-rate ship of the line, the most powerful class of warship afloat.
Dude.
104 guns, 820 men. A single broadside from Victory packs more weight of iron than every gun in Wellington's army at Waterloo.
So it's a floating fortress.
This is Epic History TV's guide to a legendary Napoleonic warship.
I'm willing to bet the Jackdaw can still take it down, though.
Today, HMS Victory lies in dry dock in Portsmouth, on England's south coast.
Oh, it's a museum?
Famous visitor attraction and the world's oldest commissioned warship.
That is cool.
She's a remarkable survivor from a vanished world of sail-powered warships and global struggles between Europe's great empires. Victory was built to boost British naval power at the height of one of these struggles,
7 Years'
the
War.
7 Years' War. Construction began at Chatham Royal Dockyard in 1759. She was designed by Sir Thomas Slade, the foremost British naval architect of the age. Around 6,000 trees went into Victory.
Damn!
Most were British oak, though her lower masts were originally New England pine. Her keel was elm, her upper masts and yards more flexible, fir and spruce.
So we're really breaking it down, like what it's made out of, everything.
The result, launched in 1765, was soon considered a masterpiece. A ship bristling with firepower, with the speed and handling of a much lighter vessel. Victory was not completed in time to take part in the 7 Years' War. She first saw action 13 years later in the American War of Independence, leading the capture of a French convoy off Ushant. When the Revolutionary Wars broke out against France, HMS Victory was the British flagship at the Allied blockade of Toulon.
Oh.
Then in 1797, she was Admiral Jarvis's flagship at his great victory over the Spanish at Cape St. Vincent. Victory was by then 32 years old, far beyond her life expectancy of 18 years.
Man, it went twice the life
Worn out,
expectancy.
she was briefly threatened with being turned into one of Britain's notorious prison ships, known as hulks. No one would have guessed that her greatest hour still lay ahead of her. Because at the last minute, Victory was reprieved and began a major 3-year refit that cost more than she did to build. She returned to service in 1803 as Vice Admiral Nelson's flagship. 2 years later, she would lead the British attack at Trafalgar and win her place in naval legend. By the Napoleonic Wars, a first-rate ship of the line was the world's largest and most sophisticated weapon of war, and it needed a huge crew to work efficiently.
By the way, the first time I've ever seen a man of war, like on screen or anything, was Pirates of the Caribbean. I still remember the HMS Dauntless. The first time I ever saw that ship on movies, I was like, they could build ships like that? Because I originally thought frigates or brigs was the biggest ship ever, but when I saw a man of war, I was like, oh my God. I was like, how can you win against that thing?
In 1805, Victory's complement was around 820, every man and boy with his designated role. From the admiral of the fleet to the ship's captain, naval lieutenants and marine officers, midshipmen, warrant officers, clerks and stewards, petty officers and their mates, sailors of the able, ordinary and landlubber variety, Royal Marines, right down to the 31 ship's boys.
Wow, dude, that's one hell of a crew.
Before we examine HMS Victory's arrangement and structure, a quick reminder of some common nautical terms. The right side of the ship, starboard.
Port.
The left side of the ship, larboard, which only became port in 1844 to reduce confusion.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense because say for instance, there's like cannon fire or, musket fire. It's just chaos, everything. And maybe you yell at the helmsman and say, ship to starboard, but maybe they'll mishear it and they just hear, board at the end and it rhymes. So they might actually turn left instead of right. So I'm actually happy they changed it to port. So that way they don't sound similar and there's no confusion.
The back of the ship, her stern.
Stern. Yep.
The front, her stem. Towards the stern was aft or abaft. Towards the stem was forward or fore. Victory's middle gun deck was 186 feet long. The top of her main mast was 205 feet above the waterline. Victory's top speed was 10 knots, or 11.5 miles per hour, fast for a ship her size. In 1780, she received the latest British naval innovation, copper sheathing for her hull, This protected her timbers from shipworm, barnacles and weeds, keeping her solid and streamlined.
Ah, okay.
Victory, like all ships of the line, was ship-rigged, meaning she had 3 masts, a foremast, mainmast and mizzenmast, and a bowsprit. Each mast was made up of sections. The lower mast, secured deep in the ship's hold, rose up through the decks to the fighting top, which served as a platform for sharpshooters in battle.
Oh yeah, I remember
Above
that from
it,
Black
the
Flag.
topmast. Then the cross trees, which secured the top gallant mast, pronounced t'gallant. The cross trees was the lookout's position, there being no crow's nests in the Navy. Each mast supported several yards, to which the sails were fastened or bent. Victory's rigging, 26 miles of rope and 786 pulleys in all, came in 2 types.
Crazy.
Standing rigging gave structural support to the masts. Forestays and backstays kept them braced fore and aft. The shrouds secured the masts laterally, and their rope steps, called ratlins, were how you climbed the masts. Experienced seamen reached the tops by climbing the futtock shrouds. On a rolling sea, this could mean climbing out over the ocean upside down, so novices were advised to use the lubber's hole. The other type of rigging was running rigging, used to operate the ship's yards and sails, and included halyards, bowlines and clewlines. Victory had 37 sails with which to harness the power of the wind, her only real form of propulsion. They had a total area of 6,500 square yards, about the size of a football pitch, though not all sails could be set together, nor did more sail necessarily mean more speed.
You could lose control of that.
Her large square sails included the forecourse, fore topsail, pronounced topsail, and fore top gallant sail, pronounced fore t'garnsail. On the mainmast, the main course, main topsail and main t'garnsail. The mizzenmast carried a fore and aft rigged sail known as a spanker or driver, as well as mizzen topsail and mizzen t'garnsail, while the bowsprit could carry a variety of fore and aft rigged sails, most commonly a jib and flying jib. Another 11 fore and aft rigged sails, known as staysails, could also be set.
When it comes to ships like this, I learned a lot about them from Pirates of the Caribbean, Assassin's Creed 3, and Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, because I remember in the index or codex, whatever you want to call it, like the Animus like records, they actually had details and talking about like ships and all that. I actually took time to read those. And on top of that, it's just something that I really like looking into. And when I owned Pirates of the Caribbean in DVD, DVD version, I am that old and all that. Yeah, in the main menu, there were some, like bonus features where there were actual historians or people who were experts on these kind of ships actually explaining about all this, and I was just really into it. But one thing I just want to mention is when it comes to a ship this big and a crew that big, I can only imagine the logistics need to maintain everything, to keep them fed and how much ammunition they can carry and all that, how long they could stay at sea without being resupplied, all that.
Victory's upper deck, or weather deck, was actually several decks. The forecastle, waist, quarterdeck, and poop deck.
Oh man, every time I hear quarterdeck, I get flashbacks, man, because that's where you get IT'd like hell.
The forecastle is a shortened form of forecastle, a term dating back to the Middle Ages when warships carried raised fighting platforms at both ends. The forecastle housed the belfry, containing the all-important ship's bell, rung regularly day and night to mark the change of watch. It also housed 2 12-pounder guns. All guns in this period were described by the weight of shot they fired. So 12-pounders fired a solid iron ball known as round shot that weighed 12 pounds, about the same as a bowling ball. The forecastle also mounted 2 68-pounder carronades. The carronade was another British innovation, a short, large caliber gun, fearsome at close quarters, but lacking a cannon's range or accuracy.
Put a grape shot in there then.
The beak deck gave access to the bowsprit and the head, 6 outdoor toilets for several hundred seamen and marines.
Oh, so that's what the head looks like? Damn, bro. But yeah, that's, I remember the head is what we, still use today. So if you want to go to the toilets, we call it a head call. You have to make a head call. That's what it is. But I didn't know it was up there.
Marines, which emptied straight into the sea below. The waist is where 4 of Victory's 6 boats were stowed. All large ships carried several boats. They were essential for ferrying men and supplies from ship to ship and ship to shore, for towing or turning the ship in adverse winds, and for launching amphibious attacks. The quarterdeck was HMS Victory's command centre.
That's where I got
a total of 12 12-pounder guns. From here, the ship was steered using the ship's wheel. This was the responsibility of one of the ship's 8 quartermasters, assisted by his mates. The ship's wheel was connected by rope to the tiller 3 decks below, which was in turn connected to the rudder. The binnacle, just 4 of the wheel, contained the ship's magnetic compasses and a lantern by which to see them. Cabins for the captain's secretary and the ship's master were located either side of the ship's wheel. Each shared their small room with a 12-pounder gun. The stern area of the quarterdeck comprised the captain's cabins, a dining room, sleeping cabin, and at the very stern of the ship, his day cabin.
Bro, dude, look at the size of that thing. That's just an apartment right there, man. I mean, look at the size of the day cabin. And he has a sleeping cabin, a dining room. Dude, captain's got it.
All sharing space with 4 12-pounders. The captain also had a private toilet, known as the quarter gallery. Above the captain's cabins, the poop deck, which provided good visibility and access to the mizzenmast. It also housed the signal locker, containing the coloured flags used to communicate with other ships and shore. The Royal Navy's signals code had been recently revised by Admiral Howe. His system involved 14 flags, which could be arranged in various combinations to convey 340 messages. For emphasis, a gun might be fired. At night, signalling was by pre-agreed combinations of gunfire, coloured lanterns, and rockets.
Got it. Because I was about to say, how can you see those flags
A
at night?
Napoleonic ship of the line was, in essence, a giant floating gun battery, designed to pulverize enemy warships and shore installations. Victory's 3 largest decks were all about her guns, as indicated by their name, the upper, middle, and lower gun deck. The upper gun deck housed 30 12-pounder guns, 15 on each side. Forward in the round houses was the head for junior officers, rank bringing slightly more privacy and comfort. The sick bay was located in the forward area of the upper gun deck, as it got more fresh air and sunlight than the lower decks. It was screened off from the rest of the deck by canvas partitions. The surgeon's assistants, nicknamed Loblolly Boys for the soup they fed to patients, also slept here in their hammocks. HMS Victory was a first-rate ship of the line, defined as one that carried 100 guns or more. They were the most powerful vessels afloat, and so admirals often chose them as their flagships, the command vessels for a fleet or squadron. Several renowned British admirals took Victory as their flagship at various times, including Earl Howe and Earl St. Vincent. The most famous, of course, was Viscount Nelson. An admiral required his own suitably grand quarters, located in the stern section of the upper gun deck. These comprised an anteroom and a dining room, which also served as a meeting room. In the sleeping cabin, the Admiral usually slept in a suspended cot. But Nelson preferred a campaign bed like this one, easier to get in and out of with only one arm. At the very stern lay the Admiral's day cabin, which served as his office and private space. The Admiral would spend much of his day here, submerged in the meetings, paperwork and administration required in the running of a fleet.
Thought so.
The Admiral's cabin.
Dude, I would love to go here, actually. I'm really interested because the last time I was on a ship, something like this, was when I was in 5th grade. And there's a ship in the Bay of San Francisco called the Balclutha. That was the last time I ever been on a ship like that, and it was a field trip. We actually worked on that ship. We actually ate on that ship. We even slept on that ship because that was part of the experience and everything.
Cabins, like all cabins on the gun decks and quarterdeck, were formed by removable wooden panels. This meant when a ship cleared for action before battle, the cabins could be rapidly dismantled and carried with furniture and personal items down into the hold.
Oh, dude, I did not know that. That's cool.
The purpose of this was to allow the gun crews to work their guns without obstruction. The middle gun deck housed 28 24-pounder guns. Heavier guns were lower in the ship for greater stability. The ship's galley, a kitchen and giant iron stove, was where the ship's cook and his mates prepared meals for the crew.
So if I was in my old MOS, this is where I would be then.
The stern section was known as the wardroom, where commissioned officers dined and slept.
So that's where I would be now.
At night, around 300 sailors and marines slept on this deck, their hammocks strung up between the guns. The deck below was the lower gun deck. This housed the Victory's heaviest guns, her 30 32-pounders.
30 of them?
At night, more than half the crew, around 460 men, slept here. This plan of HMS Bedford, a contemporary third-rate ship of the line, shows how crowded it could be below decks.
Bro, can you imagine? Like you're someone who's sleeping right there or something like that, and you got to go make a head call like to the bathroom, and you got to like bob and weave between that many people just to get there.
This far down in the ship, gun ports were usually kept shut because they were close to the waterline. With little fresh air and so many men living down here, the smells of the lower gun deck could be notoriously challenging. The stern area, separated by canvas screens, was known as the gun room. This was where warrant officers dined, with screened-off sleeping quarters for the master gunner, chaplain, and 2 junior lieutenants. They shared the gun room with the ship's tiller, a large wooden beam connecting the ship's rudder to the ship's wheel via a series of ropes and pulleys. The tiller is not currently in situ, but the strip of canvas marks its position. The beam would swing through the room when the ship turned, so anyone dining in the gun room was wise to mind their head.
Can you imagine? You're just eating and then you get your ass knocked out because someone decided to turn starboard?
Below the lower gun deck was the orlop deck, a warren of small cabins and stores beneath the waterline, lit only by lanterns. The forward section contained storerooms and cabins for the boatswain and carpenter. The more open area by the main mast was known as the cockpit, fore and aft. The midshipmen berthed and messed here, but in battle it became the surgeon's operating theatre. At the Battle of Trafalgar, after Vice Admiral Nelson was shot on the quarterdeck by a French sharpshooter, he was carried down to the orlop. Victory's surgeon was unable to save him, and this is where he died. Off the aft cockpit lay a series of cramped compartments, including personal storerooms for the captain and first lieutenant, the steward's room for issuing rations brought up from the hold, the surgeon's cabin and his dispensary, and various other cabins and storerooms. Forward and aft, hanging magazines held ready-made cartridges for the guns sent up from the main magazine. The orlop deck was surrounded by a passage known as the Carpenter's Walk, which gave the carpenter and his mates easy access to the ship's hull to plug any leaks. At the very bottom of the ship lay the hold, around 50,000 cubic feet, holding provisions for up to 6 months at sea.
6 months? Damn!
It was lined with 257 tons of iron ballast to keep the ship stable. This was covered by 200 tons of shingle, additional ballast, which provided a stable bed for the ship's 150-gallon water casks. These alone weighed roughly 300 tons at the start of a voyage.
Dude, this is carrying a lot of weight.
Other barrels contained 50 tons of salt beef, 50 tons of salt pork, and 45 tons of ship's biscuit.
Man, those biscuits going to be rock hard.
Various storerooms below contained items such as flour, spirits, tar, and paint.
No rum?
The shot locker contained 100 tons of iron shot.
So bullets.
Last but not least,
If
the most vulnerable part of the ship, the Grand Magazine, holding up to 35 tons of gunpowder in 784 barrels.
So if one cannonball goes through that, somehow like through the copper and all that, game over.
A fire here would cause an explosion that obliterated the ship and anyone aboard. Or if water got in, the gunpowder would be useless in battle. Therefore, elaborate precautions were taken to keep the magazine safe, including fire doors, fire-retardant plaster walls, copper sheathing to avoid sparks, and keep out moisture and rats. The forward section of the magazine was the filling room. Here, loose gunpowder was scooped from this powder bin into cloth bags to make cartridges for the guns. Lanterns were kept safely behind glass in an adjacent light room.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Until required, ready cartridges were stored in racks on either side of the filling room. In an age before steam or electrical power, all the ship's heavy lifting had to be done by manpower. Mechanical assistance came from 2 capstans, the main capstan and jeer capstan. These were effectively giant winches, which extended vertically through the middle and lower gun decks. To turn them, bars were inserted into the capstan head, with up to 10 men pushing each bar. Using both decks, this meant 260 men were working the capstan for the heaviest jobs, such as raising the main anchor or hoisting a gun. The work was often accompanied by a fiddler, a shanty, and the stamp of feet.
Hey man, dude, it looks like they're about to summon the Kraken. But I mean, if you sing a sea shanty while doing this, it would actually make it more fun and manageable, because a sea shanties was basically the life of Assassin's Creed Black Flag.
Victory carried 7 anchors in total.
7?
The heaviest, the best bower anchor, weighed 4 tons and was rigged at the starboard bow. The small bower anchor on the larboard side was only slightly smaller. Sheet, kedge, and stream anchors served as spares, and for keeping the ship stationary in small harbours or rough weather. All wooden ships leak at sea, even before hulls are split by cannonballs or hidden reefs. Victory had 4 crank-operated chain pumps, which could pump water out of the ship at approximately 1,300 gallons per minute, about 300 jerry cans worth. She also had 2 elm pumps
advanced
for pumping seawater into the ship for washing and putting out fires. In the late 18th century, HMS Victory and ships like her were the most sophisticated and advanced machines in the world. Massive floating batteries that could remain at sea for 6 months or more and traverse the globe.
Dude, that is insane.
In the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, they battled for naval supremacy, most dramatically in giant fleet actions. It was a contest that Britain won decisively, The consequences for Napoleon were disastrous. But for all Victory's qualities, it was not ship design that gave Britain the edge in the war at sea. It was the men who sailed her. British commanders and crews were experienced, capable and aggressive. In the next video, we'll see how they sailed and fought a ship like Victory, and how they lived aboard her.
All right. I'm really looking forward to that one. And that is what we're going to see next. Oh, there's more.
Our deep thanks to the National Museum of the Royal Navy and HMS Victory for their help in making this series. Victory is now embarking on an exciting new phase of her long and dramatic history. A major 10-year conservation project to ensure her survival far into the future.
Oh,
the work is guided by the latest scientific and historical research, and will involve removing and replacing rotting timber and other structural repairs. And the great news is that the ship remains fully open to visitors throughout.
Now, what I really like about this is breaking down the ship, its structure, its workings, and how it can operate, what it can carry, its capability, limitations, and all that. That is great. Now we're actually going to see what life was like aboard the HMS Victory. And lucky for you guys, you don't have to wait another video for that. We're actually going to jump into it right now.
HMS Victory, one of Britain's most powerful warships, in an age when Britain dominated the seas. During the Napoleonic Wars, such ships were Britain's wooden walls, protecting the homeland from invasion, while devastating enemy commerce and protecting Allied shipping. Ships of the line were the largest and most sophisticated war machines of the conflict.
Oh, that's right. Hey guys, if you want a game, it's kind of like Total War, but it's more focused on naval action. So if you guys want to sail ships and fight and everything, I do own the game. And oh man, it's been a minute since I played. I think the last time I played this game was like 2024, before I came to the, went to the East Coast. It's called Admiral Age of Sail. Oh man, that's useless. Admiral Age of Sail. So in that game, you actually have to, you know, sail ships. You actually have to like guide them and all that. But what I really like is also on top of that, you use the ships to attack fortresses or capture land objectives. So you can actually disembark your crew. And if you have like, you know, sailors or Marines, you could put them in those like rowboats and have them sail to shore. Row to shore, and then have those guys attack and capture the objectives, just like any of the battles in Total War. So if you guys want something a little bit more naval, but you still want the Total War concept, that is a game I highly recommend. So again, Ultimate Admiral Age of Sail, Ultimate Admiral Age of Sail. I thought I said that incorrectly.
Britain had around 140 in total, more than any other nation. But her advantage came less from numbers or better ship design than the qualities of the men who sailed them. Bold and experienced commanders, disciplined and eager crews, all full of confidence and accustomed to victory.
Accustomed to victory, that I like that. Bro, the size of the sails really surprised me. I mean, look how big those things are.
At the height of the Napoleonic Wars, around 145,000 men served in Britain's Royal Navy, a number comparable to European field armies of the period. Ships of the line, like HMS Victory, required huge crews, not so much to sail her, as to man her heavy guns. At the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, she had 820 men aboard, a little short of her full complement of 850. Just 15 of these men were commissioned officers, one admiral commanding the fleet.
Hey, I'm about to hit first lieutenant soon anyways.
One captain in command of the ship, 9 naval lieutenants, and 4 Royal Marine officers. Then the senior warrant officers, including the ship's master in charge of navigation, the gunner responsible for the ship's guns, small arms, powder and shot. The boatswain, responsible for sails and rigging, and who with his mates oversaw all work on deck. 2 ship's carpenters, responsible for keeping the ship afloat and making repairs. The purser, in charge of ship's provisions. A surgeon for the crew's physical welfare, and a chaplain for their spiritual.
Chaplain's important.
Victory also had 21 midshipmen. These were young cadet officers, some of whom began their naval careers at just 13.
13.
They served a 6-year apprenticeship at sea, learning seamanship, sail handling, navigation, mathematics and trigonometry.
So basically high school at sea.
They then be qualified to sit the lieutenant's exam, a rigorous assessment by a board of naval captains. Further promotion to commander, then captain, would depend on merit and, crucially, social and political connections. The process could be hugely frustrating for those without influential friends, as satirized in this cartoon by the famous illustrator George Cruikshank. Some naval officers came from aristocratic families, but most were from what today we'd call the middle classes. HMS Victory carried 43 clerks, orderlies, stewards and servants to assist the officers. 69 junior warrant officers, petty officers and their mates held various specialist roles, such as coxswain, armourer and sailmaker. There were 212 able seamen, the veteran sailors. 193 ordinary seamen, with at least a year's service.
Oh, so that's the difference.
87 landsmen, mostly new recruits, only good for hauling on ropes. 142 Royal Marine non-commissioned officers and privates, soldiers who fought at sea, led amphibious landings, and enforced discipline.
Hell yeah.
And 31 ship's boys, many of them orphans plucked from destitution, now destined for a life at sea. Each man was assigned a station for every maneuver. Top men were the fittest, bravest sailors who handled the sails high above deck. Forecastle men were knowledgeable veterans who handled anchors and bowsprit sails. The waisters in the ship's waist and afterguard on the quarterdeck and poop were for hauling on ropes. The crew was organized into 2 halves, the larboard watch and starboard watch. They took turns on and off duty, except for emergencies when all hands were called on deck.
All hands on deck,
They were further organized into divisions, each commanded by a lieutenant responsible for his men's welfare and conduct. HMS Victory's crew, like that of most British warships, was surprisingly cosmopolitan.
British Isles, England, and then a good chunk came from is Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and then foreigners. Most of them were Americans, and then there were Italians, those who came from the Netherlands, Malta, West Indies. Wow, that's really cool.
Most were from Britain and Ireland, but about 10% were foreigners, including Americans, Italians, Dutch, Maltese, and West Indians. About half were volunteers. The rest had been impressed, meaning they'd been forced into military service by the Navy's notorious press gangs.
Conscripted.
These naval recruitment parties scoured ports and passing ships for British sailors, all of whom were considered fair game for compulsory enlistment. The process was not always entirely peaceful. Navy press gangs were feared and despised by civilians. They were known to seize men who were not sailors or even British, though most were later released if they could prove their identity. And there were limits. Contrary to popular myth, the Navy did not press vagrants, nor did it accept criminals convicted of serious crimes.
So no convicts. Man, dude, their conscription was worse back then, man. Damn.
To get the best out of a ship like Victory, the captain had to know his crew and his ship.
I mean, my dad was conscripted into the South Korean army because, I mean, you know, he was born and raised in South Korea. And I mean, over there, when it comes to the conscription, they basically say you have two choices. One, you either serve in the military, or two, you go to prison. And then after you go to prison, then you serve your military service.
Every vessel has its own best point of sailing relative to the wind. HMS Victory's was 1 or 2 points off her stern. This means she made her best speed, around 10 knots, sailing in these directions. But large ships do not sail in a straight line due to leeway, the effect of the wind pushing the ship's hull sideways. This was something the helmsman steering the ship at the ship's wheel had to correct for. The officer of the watch, usually a lieutenant, was responsible for the ship when on duty, and ordered which sails to set and take in. He would summon the captain if the situation required it. In strong winds, Victory might sail under topsails alone, perhaps with a jib and flying jib.
I think they called it half sail in the games.
In lighter winds, she would crowd on sail, adding courses, topsails, and royals.
They use those terms in Assassin's Creed 3.
She might even run out the stunsail booms to set studding sails.
Set stunsails.
Stunsails. This was known as sailing large. But if the wind picked up, stunsails and royals had to be brought in quickly, as spars and sails could be damaged or torn away by a sudden strong gust.
Yeah, so the reaction time has
No
to be
sailing
fast.
ship can sail directly into the wind. Victory's closest point of sail was 6 points off the wind. This was known as sailing close-hauled or on a bowline. There were two methods of sailing against the wind. The first was tacking. This zigzag approach required precise sail handling and could strain spars and rigging. The alternative was wearing ship, an easier maneuver to perform, but slower, as it meant going the long way around.
Dang, so you're barely covering any distance.
Anchoring a large warship like Victory was also a complex operation. The sea's depth was discovered by casting the lead, literally throwing a lead weight tied to a rope into the sea. The rope clearly marked every fathom, or 6 feet. The preferred depth for anchoring was 40 fathoms or less, though it was possible in deeper water. First, the ship reduced speed by taking in sail. When the ship came to a halt, the anchor was let go, with a marker buoy attached. As current and backed sails began to drive the ship sternwards, the anchor cable was run out, using 3 times the length needed to reach the sea bottom. It was the weight of this giant cable, as much as the anchor, that kept the ship in position.
Dude, look at the thickness of that rope.
Depending on weather, tide, and sea bottom, it might be necessary to set several of Victory's anchors to keep the ship safely moored. A less well-known inshore maneuver was kedging. This was a way to drag the ship against wind or tide using manpower alone. The lighter kedge anchor was carried in a ship's boat, rowed out ahead of the ship, and let go. The crew then turned the capstan to haul the ship towards the anchor. This exhausting process was repeated as many times as necessary to move the ship into position.
Bro, you're gonna have some serious back muscles
Another
after that.
version of this was warping, in which ropes were attached to a fixed object, like a strong tree on shore, and the ship hauled towards it.
The hotter the war, the sooner the peace. Huh. Never heard of that.
In naval combat, the first consideration was always the direction and strength of the wind. A ship upwind or to windward had the advantage and was said to have the weather gauge. She could choose if and when to initiate battle, while the ship to leeward had to struggle into the wind to reach her adversary.
So you better get the hell out of there.
Ships of all nations sometimes flew a false flag, that of another nation, to hide their identity. This was considered fair practice, but to fire on an enemy without first hoisting your true colors was an unpardonable crime.
War crime back in the day.
When about to engage the enemy, the captain would order, "Beat to quarters." To the rattle of the Marines' drums, the ship was cleared for action. All temporary cabins on gun decks were dismantled and taken to the hold, so gun crews could work without obstruction. The sick bay was cleared away and all its patients carried down to the orlop deck. The galley stove was put out to reduce the risk of fire, and ammunition was moved up from the magazines to the gun decks. The ship's boats were launched and towed behind the ship. Here they were less likely to be smashed to splinters by enemy fire, and were immediately ready for any emergency.
Oh, okay, that explains it, because I have seen that, I forgot in which movie or TV show, but there was something like that, but when I saw that for the first time, I was going like, why? Now that explains why they would do that, because they don't want to risk having those boats being destroyed. Because if it comes down to they are losing and they have to abandon ship, at least they have those boats to get onto and actually get clear.
Sand was poured on the deck for traction, while splinter netting was put up above the decks to protect men from any falling spars or pulleys shot down by enemy fire. Every man then took up his station for battle. Captain and officers in full uniform on the quarterdeck. Topmen aloft, ready to trim sail. Sharpshooters on the fighting tops. Carpenter's crew on the orlop deck, ready to plug holes below the waterline. Gunners' mates in the magazine, filling extra cartridges. The surgeon in the cockpit, ready to receive casualties. For 3/4 of the crew, battle stations meant the gun decks, manning one of the ship's 104 guns. It was a huge amount of firepower for the age, and made her one of the most heavily armed warships in the world. Her heaviest cannon were the 32-pounders of the lower gun deck. At point-blank range, these guns could punch through 2 feet of solid oak. Heavy breaching ropes held each gun in place. Otherwise, recoil would have sent 4 tons of gun and carriage flying across the deck after every shot.
Can you imagine?
Each gun had a crew of between 10 and 14, which was divided in half if the ship needed to fire on both sides.
Yeah, I was about to say, because when he said that many men for each cannon, I was going, wow, dude, that's a lot. Because I know it's a game and it's a movie, but I'm just saying, like, bro, dude, in like some of the movies, like Pirates of the Caribbean, they only have like maybe 2 or 3 per gun. But in this one, they need like 10 to 14.
Each crew was led by a gun captain. He was responsible for aiming the gun, his crew shifting its massive weight with handspikes, crowbars, and wedges. When he was on target, the gun captain either applied a slow match to the touch hole, or, as seen here, pulled a lanyard attached to a gun lock to fire the gun. To reload, one man first blocked the vent with his thumb or a stopper to prevent sparks getting into the barrel during loading. The barrel was then sponged to extinguish embers and wormed to remove debris. A gunpowder cartridge was inserted at the muzzle and rammed home with a ramrod.
Yep, seen that.
Followed by the shot, and then a wad to keep everything in place. The gun was run out into firing position, and a pricker inserted into the vent to prick the cartridge and spill the gunpowder.
Oh, I didn't know about the pricker.
The gun captain then added powder from his powder horn to the vent and priming pan. The gun was now primed, ready to fire again. This process took an experienced British gun crew around 90 seconds, and they were generally faster and more accurate than their adversaries.
Which is why they were really effective.
As the battle wore on, the firing rate would fall dramatically due to exhaustion and casualties.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, that process alone, just by listening to it, I was going, oh man, dude, that's a lot to remember, because one small mistake and that cannon will not fire, or it could just blow up and be damaged. But that isn't crazy. 90 seconds for that.
Conditions on a gun deck during battle must have been horrendous. Noise, smoke, sweat, and gruesome wounds caused by shot, flying wooden splinters, and accidents. Battles usually began with a broadside, a ship firing all guns on one side in quick succession. For greater impact, the first broadside could be double-shotted, every gun loaded with 2 rounds.
Shit.
To guarantee penetration of an enemy ship's hull, the range should be less than 500 yards. Many captains preferred extreme close range to fight yardarm to yardarm.
Yeah, at that distance you should load in heat shot.
Was to rake the enemy, to fire a broadside into their stem or stern.
So it goes from front to back.
Round shot would smash its way the length of the ship, dealing death and mayhem as it went. French ships tended to fire high, on the uproll, aiming for masts and rigging to immobilize the enemy. British ships aimed low, for the hull, trying to knock out guns and crew. At long range, a mile or more, round shot could be skipped across the sea, like skimming pebbles across a pond.
Dude, I didn't know that. Dude, that's crazy.
Round shot, a solid iron ball, was the most commonly used type of ammunition. Specialist ammunition, such as bar shot, also known as double-headed shot or chain shot, was used to target masts.
Well, I know the chain shot. The first time I saw that was Pirates of the Caribbean, and it took out the rigging. But dude, that I didn't know there was something called a bar shot. It looks like you're just firing a dumbbell right out the damn cannon. I mean, can you imagine one guy is about to go lift weights and he's going, hey man, where's my dumbbell? And then the other guy's like, oh yeah, hey man, we have to use that as ammunition today.
And rigging. At close range, grape shot and canister,
there it
both
is,
packed with multiple smaller projectiles, turned a gun or carronade into a giant shotgun and were used to wreak havoc on an enemy deck.
It's basically a punt gun at that point.
A captain might decide to finish the fight by boarding an enemy warship. Designated boarders armed themselves with muskets, pistols, cutlasses, and half-pikes. The enemy ship was bound tight by grappling hooks, and after a shower of grenados and stink pots, an early form of tear gas, the boarders would swarm across to the enemy deck.
Oh, I didn't know they were called
stink
stink pots.
Morale, aggression, and momentum counted more than tactics.
This is where the Marines come in.
Though brutal, such battles were usually over quickly.
All hands ahoy. Traditional wake-up call of the bosun's mates. Life at sea. Alright. What is a daily life at sea for a sailor?
Combat at sea was relatively rare.
Battle of the Nile.
Great fleet actions, such as Trafalgar and the Nile, were rarer still. Just a handful of days, spread across 20 years of war. Weeks and months often lay between any encounter with the enemy. Then life at sea was dominated by naval routine, and the passage of time marked by the ship's bell. The naval day began at noon, determined by the officers' observation of the sun with their sextants. The moment the sun reached its highest point was noon. The ship's hourglass was turned, and the bell rung 8 times to mark the beginning of the afternoon watch. Half an hour later, as determined by a half-hour sandglass, the bell was rung once. A half hour later, it was rung twice, and so on. So 5 bells in the afternoon watch was 2:30 p.m. 8 bells meant the start of a new watch, sending half the crew below deck to rest or do other tasks, and bringing the other half on duty. There were 7 watches in all, though the first and second dog watches were only 2 hours long. This meant the 2 halves of the crew switched their routine each day, and one half wasn't always stuck with the same night watches.
So basically fire watch.
Senior officers slept in a hanging cot. For everyone else, bed was a hammock strung up from the ship's beams. Most of the men slept on the middle or lower gun decks, their hammocks suspended between the guns, just 16 inches apart. But as most ships operated a 2-watch system, half the crew on duty while the other half slept, about half the hammocks were empty at any given time.
Okay then. Because I mean, if they were all sleeping together at the same time, then that is crowded.
Normal conditions, only part of the watch was required to sail the ship. The rest carried out various tasks, not least cleaning the ship, scrubbing decks, polishing brass and painting woodwork. This was a matter of maintenance and hygiene, as well as collective pride in their ship's appearance. The crew were fed 3 times daily, though only dinner at noon was a hot meal. They organized themselves into messes of about 8 men, each taking his turn to fetch cooked food from the galley, which was eaten at a table suspended between the guns. Naval food wasn't fancy, but it was sufficient, even for men engaged in long hours of hard labor.
Let's take a look. Admiralty weekly allowance per man. Ship's biscuit, beef, pork, peas, oatmeal, butter, and cheese.
Apart from the ship's substantial stores of salted beef, pork, and ship's biscuit, the ship took on fresh meat, including livestock, fresh vegetables, and water at every possible opportunity.
Yeah, I bet.
Most of the crew probably ate better at sea than they would have in civilian life. As well as the daily routine dictated by the ship's bell, there were weekly rituals. Clothes and hammocks washed and hung out to dry once a week, weather permitting. Gunnery practice by divisions. And on Sundays, a church service led by the ship's chaplain, if there was one, or the captain. This was followed at least once a month by a public reading of the Articles of War, the regulations that governed conduct and discipline at sea. The articles listed 36 offences, from drunkenness to theft, mutiny,
Divine worship, swearing, drunkenness, scandalous actions. Dude, swearing? Dude, I know a lot of people who would get in trouble for that one. Holding intelligence with an enemy or rebel.
cowardice, and striking an officer. Half of these were punishable by death. In several cases,
that one makes sense.
It was the only sentence allowed. British discipline at sea was notoriously severe.
There was whipping.
Crimes for which a sailor was not hanged would usually lead to a flogging with the cat-o'-nine-tails. Drunkenness was the most common offence, not unconnected to the Navy's daily allowance of a gallon of beer per man in home waters, or half a pint of rum or other spirits overseas. This, mixed 4 parts water to 1 part spirits, with lemon or lime juice added to prevent scurvy, was the famous Navy grog.
Grog? Yeah, I know the grog.
Any man caught drunk or asleep on duty might get 12 lashes, delivered by a boatswain's mate in front of the assembled crew. Serious crimes, such as desertion, might result in 200 lashes 200. Or more. A punishment so severe, it sometimes killed the prisoner. Some naval captains were ferocious tyrants.
Is there
But
keyholing?
most knew that harsh punishment was best used sparingly. British sailors did not expect an easy life, but did expect to be treated fairly and with dignity.
I remember correctly, if it keel hauling or something like that, where they tie the guy like top, like their hands bound and their feet bound, and then they drag them across the bottom of the ship from one side to the other, so that way they'll get shredded apart by the barnacles that are attached to the ship underneath.
If not, there could be trouble. In 1797, the Royal Navy experienced a large-scale mutiny at Spithead, affecting 16 ships of the line.
16?
It was effectively a strike for better pay, as sailors hadn't had a pay rise in more than a century.
Wow.
The mutiny was settled without violence, and the sailors largely got what they wanted. A second mutiny at the Nore made more radical demands, with some crews threatening to defect to France. This time, the authorities were determined to set an example, and hanged 29 ringleaders. Despite hard discipline and service, the British Navy produced crews that were experienced and able, bound together by long service at sea. Men that bold commanders knew they could rely on. The British Navy, well-manned, well-resourced, and backed by a powerful economy, was able to secure complete naval dominance during the Napoleonic Wars. It would prove a crucial factor in Napoleon's defeat.
Napoleon prisoner aboard HMS Bellerophon. I know Bellerophon is a name of a Greek
HMS
prince or something.
Victory, having played her part, was placed in the Naval Reserve at the end of the war. Narrowly escaping the Breakers' Yard, she became the flagship of the Port Admiral of Portsmouth on England's south coast, and later flagship of the Royal Navy's Commander-in-Chief. After a major refit, Victory began a new life as a museum ship, opening to the public in 1928.
Wow, so this thing's been around as a museum for a minute.
Today, she is undergoing another major conservation project to deal with the many challenges faced by a 250-year-old wooden sailing ship. It will ensure her survival far into the future, as a unique memorial to this dramatic age of naval warfare. Thank you to Royal Museums Greenwich for help in collating images for this video. Greenwich in southeast London has been at the centre of British naval history for centuries, and is an essential visit for anyone with an interest in our maritime past.
Okay,
There you can visit the Royal
consider that, actually.
Observatory, home of the Greenwich Meridian, the legendary clipper ship Cutty Sark, and the National Maritime Museum.
National Maritime
Their
Museum.
galleries tell the story of Britain's long connection to the sea, a tale of exploration, empire, trade, and military power. Among the many highlights of the collection, the uniform Vice Admiral Nelson was wearing when he was killed at the Battle of Trafalgar. If you love maritime history, make sure you make a visit next time you're in town. Thank you also to Jack Fine Art and the estate of Derek Gardner for permission to use his paintings in this series. You can view many more of his fantastic artworks via the links in the description. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Dive into the most comprehensive combined arms combat game ever made using the link in our video description, with a big free bonus pack for new players.
Alright guys, there you have it. So 2 videos and in a total of over an hour long. I really enjoyed this one. Now there is another video I have saved. It's not about the HMS Victory in particular. It is basically a guide to an 18th century ship of the line. So I guess maybe some facts would, be the same because, because the HMS Victory was a ship during that time and all that. So, but still, that is something I would like to take a look into. So I've been told to please watch this video before I start getting into Admiral Nelson's naval battles, because I know in the playlist there is one of him, you know, at the Nile, at Cape St. Vincent and all that. So they said, please make sure to watch this before you get into that as an introduction into the naval battles. But I'm kind of happy that we finally got into a little bit more naval, because so far the past few videos in the Napoleonic Wars were all on land. But I'm really excited to see what kind of videos come next. And if you guys have any other recommendations, please put down in the comments below. Really would appreciate that. But so besides that, that's all I got for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that notification bell so you know when I drop more videos. Also, shout out to all my members, subscribers, viewers. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your support. Really do appreciate it. Oscar 1 Hotel, signing off.